Okay, so we're recording now, guys. Share screen. So hopefully you can all see the screen now. Let's just make sure on that first. Actually, could somebody just give me a thumbs up or something in the or just a message in the chat? I don't know if I can see the chat actually while I'm in here. Or if somebody just unmutes their mic just to say that they can see the screen and can hear me okay?
Yeah, can hear you and hear you.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Cool. So welcome, everyone. This is a webinar on how to protect yourself from electromagnetic frequencies and the keys to thrive in this modern world of radiation. So as most of you are aware, and that's probably why you're on the call, is that there is so much radiation in our environment now, and Mother Earth has been blanketed in radiation. And it's really interesting, actually, from a different perspective. There is a lot of photons right now, according to some astrologers. They say that there's a lot of photon energy or light energy which is coming in as well. And in Vedic science, they say we're entering a golden age, or we're at the beginning of a golden age. And we're 500 years into a 10,000 year cycle of a golden age. So it's interesting with what we're faced with. And like always, we're in a world of duality. And so there's light and dark and opposite ends of the spectrum, just like love and hate, or whatever the opposite of love is, fear, I guess. Then there is always opposites in this dualistic world. So there's a lot of light energy coming. So some people are calling this the Great Awakening. And of course, there's some which are really stuck in fear. And this is one of the reasons why I wanted to do this subject, because it's really topical right now, especially with people talking about 5G and that possibly being rolled out. So we're not going to put so much emphasis on radiation itself. I'm going to give a little bit of an overview of that, but I'm guessing the reason why you've come to this is that you already know something about that. So the whole emphasis of this is the positivity, what we can do, what we can do proactively, so that we can actually do something about it, not just speak about the problem and get stuck in the problem. The point of this is to overcome the so-called problem so that we can protect ourselves ultimately and thrive. It's just a little disclaimer. So the following is by no means a cure-all. Individual programs are advisable as well, because we are all unique. They're purely guidelines. Contact us, or if you've got a therapist you work with, if you'd like further information or to make an appointment. And as always, if you're concerned, consult your GP, especially in relation to if you have any current things going on, then by all means make sure or double check it with your GP or your current practitioner before implementing anything new. So just give you a brief history. So I'm not going to highlight this, but just give you a brief history of what's happened in relation to, so this is different electromagnetic frequencies which have been brought out and their influence on Earth, on us ultimately. So in 1916, we had radio waves which were brought out. And then in 1918, the Spanish flu outbreak. Then in 2003, we had 3G introduced. And then the SARS outbreak came on the back end of that. And just to give you a bit of an outline of what this 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G means. So 3G is actually 3 billion cycles per second. That's what it means. And we're going up to 5 billion cycles per second and beyond, gigahertz. So that's what gigahertz means. Gigahertz means billions of cycles per second. And just to give you a little bit of an overview of where our chakras, or where our heart chakra, for example, is, some people say 5 to 8 hertz, so not gigahertz, 5 to 8 hertz. So we're going 1 billion times that when we're going into this 5th generation, as they call it. So we're really being bombarded with high frequencies. And as you can see then, 2009, 4G introduced, and then we had the swine flu outbreak. It says 2008 in some other places, the 4G was introduced, and then swine flu 2009, and then of course 5G introduced 1920s, like it's being rolled out now. Some people say that it's being tested now. Some people say it hasn't been tested. It's up for debate, and it depends where you are as well, because there's some places which have been really successful in not getting it rolled out. I know Glastonbury and a couple of areas around there in the UK. Not quite sure of many others in the UK, but there's different countries as well which have been successful in not having the rollout of 5G, and actually putting the onus on the government to give a safety test, because there's a video that goes around which is from the United States, and the judge asks, well, have you done any safety tests? And it's a really telling video, because you've got the people from the telecoms industry, and they say no. And he said, you mean to say that there's no safety tests been done? And he said no. So I'm laughing, but it's not funny. It's a bit of a nervous laugh, I guess, because that, obviously before doing anything, if I was to roll out something, if I was to make a new supplement or something, for example, I'd have to make sure that I'd followed all of the guidelines to make sure that they're safe. So I believe that we should be putting the onus back onto the government and saying, look, we want to just prove it's safe. That's all. If you prove it's safe, then no worries. But they haven't actually done that. So that's just I thought that they were interesting statistics, whether you subscribe to that or not, that they've actually caused. So let's go back to it a minute, and from a naturopathic perspective, let's see how that could have happened. So whether you subscribe to this has happened or not, like from a naturopathic perspective, what this could be doing is these waves, yes, they're invisible, but they do affect our bodies, and positively and negatively, depending on what ones they are. Like, these are man-made ones, but obviously we got lots of different forms of radiation. The sun is a form of radiation, but that's positive radiation. And there's many other forms which are actually really good for us. And I believe it was Albert Einstein that said we're going into an era of energy healing now and frequency healing. So these very things which could be called negative, the World Health Organization says that this type of microwave radiation is a 2B possible carcinogen. Now that's the World Health Organization. And just to give you a heads up on that, things like lead exhaust fumes, they used to be in possible carcinogen, cigarettes, smoking, but they got moved up into cancer causing after research. So of course, when there's money involved in relation to research, sometimes the industry itself will not put up the money to do the research, because obviously it's going to have an effect on their bottom line if it comes out negative, or they will put some research out there. However, the research can be influenced, and of course scientists and people can be influenced by money, obviously. So just be aware of that. But there are some of the studies which I'll be highlighting later, which are independent studies from scientists, well-known scientists around the world as well. It's called the Bioinitiative Report, but I believe it's in the slides. So that's to give you an idea of where we've gone and how we've kind of really upped just to go back on that, actually, I just want to highlight as well that the safety levels of radiation, microwave radiation, are very, very high according to the Bioinitiative Report. They're extremely high, and they say that they're too high. So effectively, we could have a lot of things which are in place right now, which according to current guidelines are labeled as safe in inverted commas. However, they're not. It's just because they've put the safety guidelines so high. So that's what a lot of people say in this space. So like I said, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but just to give you a bit of an overview, because this is going to be helpful for you in relation to your home. So some of the things that you're exposed to in your home in relation to microwave radiation. So a smart home, this is what we're aiming, not what we're aiming for, but this is what people are aiming for. Some people have got smart homes now. And so things like, so on the basic thing which many people have got now, even people which are conscious around this stuff, is we've got Wi-Fi in our houses. So there's somebody called, something Informer, his name is, something Informer, and he's got a website around electromagnetic frequencies and safety. And he said that there's some routers out there now which have got 802, I'll be covering it later, but it's 802.11 AD apparently. It's got on the back of a router. And those ones are actually emitting 5G radiation into a house through Wi-Fi. So that's not all of them, but the newer ones apparently. And so we could be emitting 5G radiation into our house unbeknown to us right now anyway, which we're not aware of. Or maybe we are aware of, but we don't realize the significant dangers of that. So that's one thing, but I'll be giving some tips later on how we can help with that. There's things like intelligence, things like cameras, which are all linked up to Wi-Fi and lights and things now. Another big emission of electromagnetic frequencies are these new lights and energy saving lights. They also aren't so good in relation to emitting frequencies like this. Obviously our computers, our phones, our devices, and we're all using them in this day and age. Well, most of us, unless we're living on a retreat somewhere, but it's just changing our consciousness and getting more conscious around using them and switching them off when we're not using them. But again, I'll be covering that later. So even the heating, washing machines, eventually with the Internet of Things, they're talking about hooking up the refrigerator, everything in the house basically will be alive and smart in inverted commas. I don't believe that's smart, but we'll, so big thing that's not on this is smart meters. So smart meters emit a pulsed frequency radiation, and even though they say that they're not, some people say that they're not and they're not dangerous and stuff. There's many people that have done tests with different meters and they've shown that they're giving off a lot more frequencies than what they are emitting. When I'm saying they, the people that are propagating them, the utilities companies, etc. So let's just give you an overview of where our radiation is coming from now. And of course, this is within the home. Externally, then we've got things like masts and the new lights that have been put up. A lot of new lights have been put up recently, the LED lights. They're going to be connected apparently to the 5G network as well. So we may effectively have many small masts or signals around our or even right outside our house. So just give you a little bit of an overview, and it's easier to learn through stories. So my history, I'm interested in EMFs, where it came from. I'm really, really passionate about this subject because I suffered with hyper-electrosensitivity myself. I'll give you a little bit of an overview about that now, and that's why, because I've personally experienced it. You know what it's like if we haven't experienced something ourselves personally, and especially something like this, because it's invisible to the naked eye. It could be seen as being a conspiracy theory, but when you've experienced it firsthand, then you know what it does and you've had to heal yourself from it. Then, you know, I'm really passionate about alarming other people around it, but not only alarming people. Like I said at the start, I really want to emphasize here what we can do positively. There's many people already speaking about the dangers and the fear aspect of it, but I believe there's not enough people saying what we can do in order to stay and thrive, actually, not just stay healthy, but thrive through this. So I first became aware of EMFs when I was in London, and I went to London with a big dream of healing people in London and getting into the business world in London and using like metaphysical healing and stuff, and somewhat successful. I had a business partner there, and we had this therapy centre in central London. It was like a detox clinic. It was very successful. We were working with high-class clients and stuff. But after, I was only there for about 6 months in total, but I think it was about halfway into my London experience, and I jumped into my car, black Passat, and I jumped into the car and I put the sat nav on because I didn't know my way around London, so I had to rely on the sat nav. And then all of a sudden, I felt this like dizziness and nausea and stuff. And I was thinking, what the heck is that? And at first I didn't click that it was the sat nav, but then I switched the sat nav off. It went, switched the sat nav back on, and then it came back again. I was thinking, that's really weird, because I didn't know nothing about this at the time. I was very into like meditation and different subtle frequencies that can affect us, but I didn't realize that this could affect us in that way. So that was one of my first awakenings, and realizing and actually feeling EMFs for myself. I could actually feel a difference that it made, and you may be able to relate if you, when you first did that yourself, maybe anxiety, feelings of anxiety, or wanting to get away, or run out of a place, or panic. Those are some of the things which we'll highlight a little bit later too. And so this is some of the symptoms that people experience. So brain fog, neurological disorders, headaches, memory loss, tinnitus is very common when a lot of people are talking about tinnitus in these days. Then when it gets more chronic, like chronic fatigue type symptoms, or tired all the time, muscle and joint pain, numbness, sleep issues, heart issues, palpitations is a very common one also. And heart issues is because we're electrical beings and we use electric within our bodies in order to pump our heart. So it can interfere with our bodily systems, mood swings, and endocrine problems. Again, because of like what I said earlier, it interferes with our natural electromagnetic field, or aura, some people call it. So how did I get there? So it didn't just happen overnight. It was an accumulative effect. And like smoking, some people say EMFs can take about 10 years in order for things to manifest in their entirety. So you could have no symptoms, and then all of a sudden, 10 years later, you could have, I know of some people which have just had a brain tumor, and it's right where they speak on the phone. So it doesn't happen overnight. And it's one of those things, just like you could, if you put a frog in boiling water, it's not a very nice analogy, but if you put a frog in boiling water, they want to jump out straight away. But if you boil them gently, quietly, increasing the heat, then they don't feel it until it's too late. So it's a little bit like that. We're like lab rats at the minute with what's going on. So, but I had years of mobile phone use up until that point, using dongles and Wi-Fi for like sales. I was in insurance sales, and I wasn't aware of this. I was an ex-rugby player. I wasn't aware of all this stuff. I actually lived by a mast at one point, very close in Swansea, in Town Hill, and speaking on the phone with the phone touching the side of my face. Now, there's loads of studies out there, and it's called the specific absorption rate, SAR. And it even talks about this within your phone guidelines. And it says that you're supposed to keep the phone different for different phone companies. But they say to keep the phone, most of them is at least 10 millimeters or a centimeter, set between like a centimeter and 2 inches, or 2.5 to 3 centimeters, for example, away from your face. But personally, what I recommend now is speakerphone, so that it's nowhere near your face, because the specific absorption rate tests they've done have shown that it heats up, the radiation heats up, and it can go across the whole of your face when you're speaking on the phone. And you can see this through like thermology. They show like thermal imagery of the face, and with children it's even more so. So when you're looking at, we had the picture of the home earlier, so things like baby monitors with Wi-Fi and connection or Bluetooth, they really should not be in a room with children, because our Wi-Fi routers close to children, because they can get affected by these a lot more than us, because they've got softer tissues in the brain and the skull isn't quite developed yet. But also I had some tattoo removal. So there's heavy metals in some tattoo inks, and mercury even in some tattoo inks, and it's in red and black. And I had a lot of red and black when I did the tattoo removal in London. So that heavy metal poisoning and the mercury then will add up to the cumulative effect of the heavy metals that were already in my system. I mean, chemtrails, for example, drop a lot of aluminium and stuff by all accounts. I don't know firsthand, but by all accounts, they drop a lot of aluminium as well. So we've got a lot of heavy metals in our dietary system as well, which we can act like a mast ourselves then, if you like, or like an antenna. So we pick up more of the electromagnetic frequencies, the more of these metals that we've got in our body. We've got positive metals, like things like gold and silver. These are good. And these can actually help our own electromagnetic frequencies within our body. You can use things like nano gold, or you can use colloidal silver. These things are really good metals, but then there's some negative metals like mercury, like aluminium, which are not good. I also had removal of mercury fillings. So one big thing is to make sure that mercury fillings, and the reason why just to give you a heads up, the reason why I'm telling you this is not just to emphasize my story, but to tell you through a story of all things that can help you, your clients and your friends and your family as well, hopefully. So removal of mercury, we've got to be really cautious when we're removing amalgam fillings. And some places just put gauze in the back of your mouth. That stops it physically going down. But we also need, down to your throat. We also need to have a mask on to make sure it's not going in through a nose, because breathing mercury, when they're drilling into the filling, that can be a lot worse, because it can go straight into the bloodstream or straight as a vapor and straight into the brain, actually, and cross the blood-brain barrier, I believe. So that can be a lot more dangerous. So I'd had all these things. I had about 10 actually amalgam fillings. So I'd had about 5 or 6 of them removed around this time when I started getting sensitive in London. A history of alcohol and recreational drugs years prior. So liver toxicity, like I say, from being a semi-professional rugby player and all that goes alongside that. I'd already compromised my liver and my system. Living in central London is a high, so if we're in city centres, we need to be extra cautious, because it's a cumulative effect. So the more dense the population is, or the more phones are there, the more Wi-Fi is there, usually there's more masts as well in city centres. So the cumulative effect and the amount of EMFs are much higher in those areas. And you can actually see on maps as well. I don't have a website off the top of my head, but there's different maps you can see where, and nearly always around city centres and the surrounding areas of city centres are hotspots for EMF radiation. I was eating a conventional rugby player diet as well, things like meat, gluten and sugar, thinking they were good at the time because they were advised by my physiotherapists and my dietitians and stuff at the time. So all of these effects, the cumulative effects, and of course following things like fat-free diets, which came around when I was like in my teens or early teens, and I've always liked to be healthy and up to date, but I wasn't aware that we actually need essential fatty acids, which we'll be going into later, and they can be really influential on things like the brain development, for example. So all of this accumulative effect built up to the point where I was sensitive to the radiation. And it came to the point that I had to come back to Wales to heal. I had to come back home and out of London, because I was feeling, it wasn't an anxiety like you'd normally feel about something else. I knew it was related to EMFs, because I got to the point where I could distinguish that it was that was actually affecting it. But sometimes it felt like I was just on a hamster wheel and I was just going around and around in circles. There's even been lots of studies where they've put EMF radiation, like a Wi-Fi router, for example, or a phone around ants, and they just go really scatty and all over the place. And you may recognize that as well when you've been exposed to EMF radiation, or if you've had like a sat nav on, or you've been on the phone for too long. Sometimes you can feel scatty or irritated or angry even, because the cumulative effect of the radiation hitting the body and then perhaps not having enough of the things we need in order to deal with that. So I went back to Wales to heal, some nice fresh air, get the oxygen in my lungs, lots of nice walks in nature. And gradually things started to improve. I didn't do anything really specifically for electro hypersensitivity, because this is a long time ago. It was over 10 years ago now. So this was really not known about back then. And people, they already were looking at me as if I had two heads, because I was into metaphysics and spirituality and different things, but never mind telling them that the mobile phone was giving me these feelings in my head and stuff. So it was very different now. Many people are aware of these things now, thankfully. So I didn't really do anything specific for that. I just came back and rested, recovered. Spent a lot of time in nature though, which was very helpful. And I went away, and then I started coming back in to working and stuff again, and there was no problems. Then spiritually, I was asking a lot of questions because I was into a lot of different conspiracy theories at the time. There's loads of things being surfaced right now about conspiracy theories, and I'm thankful that I've already done a lot of research from my time before when I started to awaken, I guess. And it got to a point where I knew that there was, like I said earlier, there's so much focus on the dangers and the negativity and the fear. It's like, yeah, okay, but what's the positive, It's like, if the world is so negative and stuff, then there's got to be a positive. And that's what I kept praying and kept asking God for, really, the divine. And a couple of weeks later, I ended up in the Hare Krishna temple, and I was chanting, singing and dancing, and it just felt like I'd come home. It was phenomenal, and it really resonated with my heart. So much so that 2 weeks later, I moved in, shaved my hair off, and I moved in and started wearing robes and serving as a monk. So the reason why I'm telling you this is after serving for 2 years as a monk, so we were working quite a lot, and there's often many factors, like I highlighted earlier. It's not just one factor. One thing I didn't have on the previous slide was that we were getting up very early in the morning. So sleep is very important for healing with EMF radiation, and it can affect your melatonin cycle if you don't get enough sleep. Also, if you're using or sleeping with your phone, for example, or sleeping in a room that's got a lot of radiation, it can affect your melatonin cycle. So when you wake up, you still feel groggy when you wake up because your body hasn't been flushed with melatonin, and it's an antioxidant, so it takes care of the cumulative effect that we've picked up throughout the day. So this was affecting me because I wasn't getting enough sleep, basically, and I was working very hard as a monk, and I didn't join the temple until I was 30. Whereas a lot of the other monks were like late teens, early 20s, and they could deal with it. I was, like I said, with my history and stuff as well. Some people, interestingly enough, just while I'm on that subject, don't feel anything from electromagnetic frequencies, and that's part of the reason why they can't understand why people go on about them. And it depends on our histories. From a naturopathic perspective, it really does depend on what our history is and where those cracks are in our history. So where our parents have given us perhaps a weakness in our liver, our kidneys, or whatever it is, heart. Depending upon that, or our cumulative karma, if you like, then it depends on how sensitive we're going to be to these things. And some people, I dare say, actually thrive in these types of environment. But it's not the majority. The majority do get affected, but they're not necessarily aware of it. And currently there's a small population, that is about 5 to 10%, I believe, that have got actually electro hypersensitivity, it's called. Whereas there's about 35% which have got mild symptoms of that. They're probably old statistics now. So I dare say that they're more, and people are being misdiagnosed as well because of the lack of knowledge around this with doctors and stuff. So it's, but I dare say that there's some people that they may not get affected by it. And that depends on, like I say, their strength, their immunity, and their cumulative karma, or how strong they are ultimately within their body systems, and what their history is like. So after 2 years, in short, after 2 years serving as a monk, I started to feel these symptoms, feeling really strongly again. And I really recognized it this time because of my previous experience in London, feeling the nausea and like a pressure in my head, like a magnetism almost in my head. And when I went and told the doctor about those symptoms, they again looked at me as if I had two heads, saying I've got this like magnetic feeling in my head. And the first doctor just wouldn't even give me a paper. I'm not the type to go on sick. And he wouldn't even give me a sick paper. So I took a second opinion. So that's another thing to do as well if you experience it with clients or family members. I got a second opinion, and she was really open to the alternative methods. And she said, yeah, just carry on with the naturopathy, just carry on with, I was having acupuncture and different things at the time. She said, yeah, carry on with all that. And progressively, as I'll share with you now, it started getting better. But yeah, so it accumulated and got to the point where I had to leave the temple, which was really sad. And because I couldn't really serve, I couldn't do my services. And a lot of the things we do is in city centres where there is dense population of people, giving out literature, free food and stuff to the homeless and needy. I couldn't do that any longer, so I had to leave. So I had like a chronic health condition. I was feeling tired all the time, and I'm used to having a lot of energy. As I said, I played rugby. I'm an ex-rugby player, played semi-professionally, played for Wales and youth and university level. So I'm used to having a lot of energy. But I was feeling tired all the time. I was waking up groggy. I was tired throughout the day. And if I do anything, then I'd feel knackered after it. And some people call it tired all the time. Some people call it chronic fatigue. So I was experiencing those types of symptoms. And thankfully, that's when I kept getting told that I needed to go and see Emma. So at that point, there's a few times I got told, and I finally listened and went to go and see Emma. And so she was Emma Jones then. She's in the first meeting, she really understood because she'd experienced a lot of that stuff herself as well. Emma was actually sensitive to TVs because at the time when she started studying naturopathy and started going through some difficulties, there weren't any mobile phones. So the electrical frequencies we were exposed to then were really low in comparison to now. It was just like televisions, for example, or hairdryers and kettles, but even those things, specifically televisions, Emma said she was sensitive to. So it was so nice to be able to speak to somebody that had already been through it, but not only been through it, come out the other end of it. That's another really important factor. There's so many different groups and sites out there which focus on the problem. And I was in all those groups, and I was focusing a lot on the problem and things outside of myself. But Emma really, really helped me to start looking inside of myself, into my body, fixing what's wrong inside, and then the outside will stop affecting me so much. Because if you just imagine, if we're so toxic internally, then we can't cope with even external toxicity, like microwave radiation, for example, or lights or LEDs, whatever. We can't even cope with that because we're so clogged up really with the toxic load within our body. I was resistant to that at first because I've been so conditioned with all the research I'd done. But Emma convinced me into really looking at my body and fixing my body. And it was such a breath of fresh air to have somebody in Wales who knew about all this stuff. And this is the foundation of the naturopathic approach, really. So it's the 3 steps to ultimate health. This is what she shared with me in the first session. And just a little disclaimer as well, I'm going to be sharing with you a lot of stuff here, so please stick with me and don't expect everything to just be, just to get everything straight away. You may have to re-listen to it. And also just to implement these things, because we're all in different stages in our healing journey. So implement these things step by step and going through it in that process, or better still, if you can, having a therapist, having a one-to-one with a therapist. So they can look at your individual picture and then you can go over things bit by bit, rather than don't try and implement all of this stuff at once, because that also can have just as a negative effect. And you can over detox, and then that can have a negative effect on you. So the first point is hydration and cleaning up the diet. So hydration and water, we're going to be going into a little bit more of the subtler aspects of water later on, but just for the purpose of this, hydration. So we usually say that the best form of water is spring water. If you live next to a spring or by a spring which has been tested and you know it's safe drinking water, that is fantastic because it's already vortexed by nature. It's structured by nature as nature intended it. Unfortunately, we've got to tamper with things so much these days because they've already been tampered with in order to bring them back to a natural state, which I'll share with you later on. However, so initially it's spring water is the best if you can get hold of it, but not all of us live next to a spring. So second to that would be getting your own filter in the house. So you can get whole house filters, which takes out things like fluoride and chlorine. I believe there's no fluoride in Wales, but there is in England, as far as I know. But we've all got chlorine in the water because they use chlorine to clean the water, and chlorine kills living organisms. And what are we? A living organism, right? So yeah, it may not kill us straight away, it'll kill smaller things straight away, but over time it will have an effect. So if we get a whole house filter, and a company that we use currently, I've got some other companies with more expensive products, but a company we use currently is called the Water Filter Man, thewaterfilterman.co.uk, I believe it is, and his name is Nigel. So, and tell him Emma and Steve have sent you if you're interested. It's relatively cheap. It's just £100 for, roughly about £100 for the whole house filter, and the same for the under sink filter, roughly, unless the prices have changed. So we've got a whole house and an under sink filter for our drinking water. So it's gone through another process to get it even cleaner then. And I'll go through the more subtle things like vortexing and stuff a little bit later on, because we also do that to it afterwards, and hydrogenation as well. So then third would be bottled water, glass bottled water ideally, but that's hard to come by, and of course it's quite difficult to hold large quantities of glass water and to transport it. So next from that is plastic bottles, unfortunately, which obviously leach into it, and of course we've got this big issue with plastic in the environment. So the chemicals leach from the plastic into the water, plus we've got this whole plastic issue on the planet which we need to get rid of. Hopefully we'll get to the point where we've got like veggie plastic. We haven't got to that point yet, unfortunately, but hopefully we will get to that point, and we'll have some safe kind of like plastic in inverted commas, or like fake plastic which they can come up with, which will be biodegradable, but currently we haven't got that. Then after that would be things like, I used to say Brita filters actually, but somebody told me that they're no good and they actually can input things into the water, so I don't recommend them anymore. We've got like tabletop filters that you can get. Eva used to be the old make of them, but I think they've changed their name now, but there's some different tabletop ones. There's a stainless steel one called Berkeley, I believe. And so yeah, you can get tabletop ones. And of course then your conventional tap water then is coming last on our list. However, if that's the only water you're drinking, it's much better to get some water than no water, or to have water than Coke or pop, or whatever. For example, I know a lot of people listening to this are already conscious about this stuff, so I'm not going to spend too much time around it, but some water is better than no water, so even if that's tap water. But then looking to energize that tap water in some way, that may be through doing your own healing on it, or maybe from introducing some sacred symbols and stuff around the glass, which I'll go into a little bit later on. And this has even been proven now scientifically to actually change the structure of the water. So some people argue that the structure is more important than how toxic it is. I'd say both. So I'd say clean it up as much as we can, but then also make sure that it's structured. So if we're doing both, then we're on to a winner, because our bodies are roughly 80% water. So it's, as you can see, it's very important that we're drinking a good quality water. That's why it's first on our approach. And then cleaning up the diet. So eating as much organic as possible. And unless we're growing our own, I guess it's quite difficult to live a fully 100% organic diet. We're quite close, but inevitably there's some things which get into the diet. So yeah, making sure that we're taking away the things with a toxic load in them, and ultimately taking a toxic load away from our diet. Interestingly enough, there's been some studies where people after just 2 weeks on an organic diet have removed most of the chemicals and stuff from a non-organic diet in studies. So we can quite quickly start to turn around this toxic load within our body. Number 2 is alkalizing essential fatty acids and superfoods. So Emma got me alkalizing by having like raw foods, and then introducing essential fatty acids like flaxseed oil. We'll go into a bit of detail. Algae, we'll go into a bit of detail a little bit later on about that. And superfoods, things like maca, wheatgrass, for example, introducing these foods which are densely nutrient dense. So then introducing those foods so that we can start to get our nutrients back up. And the soils are so depleted, vegetables, fruits are very depleted in this day and age because we've messed with them so much. Excuse me. So number 3 is naturopathic techniques, supplementation, and environmental awareness. So, excuse me a minute. Naturopathic techniques, we'll go into now on supplementation. I've got another slide with them. And we've already covered environmental awareness, just becoming aware of our own internal environment first of all, and then external, what's outside the home, neighbours, etc. So remembering that this is step by step, okay? Don't try and implement all of this stuff at once. So minimum of 2 litres of water a day. Of course, that depends on body size, but we generally recommend, and how much you do, how active you are, if you teach yoga, or if you're a personal trainer, of course, you're going to need much more. If you do more exercise, you're going to need much more water as well. But that's an average. 2 litres, 4 pints of good quality water every day. And I've already given you the different sources, the best forms of that. Number 2 is removal of dehydrating foods. So alcohol is a big one here. They say that 1 glass of alcohol or caffeine, like coffee, you need to have like 4 cups of water in order to neutralize just that 1 cup of alcohol or coffee in order to get rehydrated after that. So they're diuretics and they take water out of our body, but we need to be keeping very fluid within inside our body. So removing as well of drying foods, things like, obviously things like crisps, but even things like crackers and stuff, biscuits, all these breads and glutinous foods, these drying types of foods really take liquid from our body so they can further dehydrate us. And a good analogy with that in relation to glutinous foods is, remember when you used to do like papier-mâché as a kid in school, then is that like the gluten is like that gluey kind of papery substance that comes from papier-mâché, and that's getting stuck inside your stomach. And of course you need loads of water then, because the flour is already dry. You need a lot of water from the body just to digest it. So removal of drying foods is a good tip. And then introducing the raw foods, just like I highlighted earlier about the alkalizing. So generally on the acid alkaline scale, of course, it's 1 to 14 or 0 to 14, I guess. And 1 being, or 0 being the most acidic, up to 14 being the most alkaline. Our bodies are generally around 7.3 to keep homeostasis. However, it's different in different parts of the body, of course, but in general, our body needs to be 7.3 in order to remain in homeostasis. So if we're not alkaline enough, our body starts to rob. Well, first of all, if we haven't got enough stores of things like magnesium and calcium, these alkalizing minerals, then our body will start going to our organs and then further into our bones in order to get that, in order to neutralize the acidity. So that's why people are getting a lot of osteoporosis, arthritis, and these different things, because our bodies are getting too acidic, and then we haven't got enough minerals within our food in order to neutralize that acidity. And we live in such a acidic lifestyle in general. If we live in a general Western lifestyle, it's quite acidic, not just in diet, but in different activities and stuff as well. So raw foods can really help to get the alkaline balance in. To give you a quick example, like caffeine is generally 4 on a pH scale. So that's very, very acidic. And if you can imagine how much water and nutrients or minerals it's going to take in order to neutralize that acidity, just 1 cup of coffee. So just imagine with all the different foods we're having, meat as well, fried foods, etc., then are much more acidic in nature. So again, we're going to need to utilize more of those minerals to digest them. But then when we get to more of a plant-based diet, then, so it goes like from red meat, white meat, fish, this is acid to alkaline, then eggs, dairy products. And then as we get to more of a plant-based diet then, especially raw, because you can get acidic plant-based foods, things like tomatoes and the deadly nightshade family, potatoes, aubergines. They're particularly acidic and not good for people that have got things like arthritis. But then when we get into more raw plant-based stuff, you're talking about more of the alkaline foods. And red foods are things to avoid as well, because they are generally more acid forming in the body. So yeah, so introduce more raw foods in order to alkalize the body, things like sprouts and salads, of course. You can be very creative with that now. There's so many raw food books where you can get really nutritious but delicious as well, raw food recipes. Juicing was a massive key to my healing, and I can't emphasize this enough. It's the biggest one on my list, next to something I'm going to share with you later actually now. Wheatgrass in particular. Dr. Brian Clements says it's the most nutrient-dense food on the planet. I don't know how true that is, but that's what I've heard once from Dr. Brian Clements of the Hippocrates Institute. It's got such an array of nutrients. It's really dense. So one wheatgrass shot a day can be like having a multivitamin, for example, if you prefer to do it through whole foods and superfoods. Green juices and smoothies then were very, very influential in my healing and still are now. And if there's any time when I feel out of balance, one of the go-to things that brings me back to balance is juice. And that can really, really have a positive effect. And it's like, boom, back in the room, straight away back in the room. And you may be able to relate to this. I know there's loads of health conscious people on here, and forgive me if I'm going over old ground, but it's really good for us to have a refresher as well. Even if we are aware of this stuff, we could be picking up little nuggets and things. Oh yeah, I haven't done that for a while. Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah, so let's just be open to new things as well. It could be things that we haven't seen or we've seen before, but they didn't land at the time, but now maybe they're more important. So like I said earlier, essential fatty acids, like usually a minimum of 2,000 milligrams per day we talk about, especially at the start. So that's usually 2 capsules, dependent upon the potency of the capsules. We advise plant-based ones, so you're talking about things like flax, hemp, and if you're going to go to fish oils, we tend to recommend algae instead. There are certain mental health symptoms which do work really well with fish oils, but because of so many different reasons, we tend to advise plant-based, and algae can be a way of getting the things that we need from what some health experts say we've got to have from fish, but algae is a way we can get that. So we usually recommend 2,000 milligrams per day. So that could be if you've got an oil, if you've got a flaxseed oil, usually say like 2 tablespoons of flaxseed oil, or 1 tablespoon twice a day. And that could be over your salad or in your food, but trying to keep it raw, because flax is quite, well, a lot of fats are very sensitive to temperatures. And I'm really glad I brought that up actually, because I didn't mention earlier about bad fats. And that was one of the biggest keys for me in healing from this. So even if we haven't got electro hypersensitivity, if we're eating a lot of bad fats, then that's going to clog up the liver, because the liver finds that very hard to digest. So if we can cut our bad fats, so bad fats, for those that aren't aware, are fats that have been cooked over certain temperatures, and they've all got different temperatures where they turn into bad fats. And so we generally recommend, if you're vegetarian, then it would be ghee, because that can handle very high temperatures. And then for vegan, it would be coconut oil or coconut butter, because they as well can handle high temperatures without damaging the fats. That's vital. And of course, if we're eating out, none of us are eating out now, but if we're eating out, we haven't got as much control, obviously, in what fats they're using. So just being aware of the fried things that you're having when you're out as well, because that can have a real negative effect. And I notice if I fall off the wagon and have something when I'm out, it's not often, but if I have things when I'm out, I really do notice. And it's like a hangover type feeling. I can feel like my liver is really struggling with the bad fats. So take the bad fats out and put the good fats in. That's key. And it's key actually for losing weight, interestingly enough. Like I said earlier about the whole fat-free thing that came in. actually we need good fats in order to break down the bad fats. And there's lots of studies around that as well. Things like coconut oil, people have said that have been tremendous in helping things like Alzheimer's and stuff, interestingly enough. But also some people going on high fat diets and then finding that they're actually losing weight. Doesn't happen for everyone. We're all different. We all got different body types, but we do need a certain amount of good fats. So superfoods, maca was essential for me. And maca is very, very good for males and females, particularly males, but very good for females as well, for regulating the hormones. And it's very high in zinc. So it's an aphrodisiac for that reason. So males, be careful with it because it can be very stimulating, and females is stimulating for, but it's a very good food. It's amazing. They used to give it to, I believe the Peruvian warriors used to have it, I believe. It's a root food, but it's very, very dense superfood. Most of you are probably aware of maca already. And so you can make like maca lattes, for example, on maca. And I think I've got, it's not here, somewhere else. Yeah, so you can use maca in lattes, for example. You can use them in matcha lattes as well. And they can taste really delicious. They give it a nice earthy kind of taste to the lattes. And so you can just add like half a teaspoon. When I first started, I was taking tablespoons of this stuff, and it was really influential in healing. And those of you that know my story as well, it was very influential in helping me with my infertility, because I got classed as infertile in London. I had a test, and then of course after doing this, now we've got 3 beautiful daughters. So I believe maca, along with everything else I'm telling you about, was very influential. So anyone struggling with infertility, and that's another big thing that EMFs can affect, is they really affect sperm, and they can really affect ladies' reproductive organs as well, along with the male. So maca is a really, really good superfood for healing those areas. Algaroba then and carob can be used as an alternative for chocolate, because I was sensitive at that time to stimulants, things like chocolate, even matcha tea and stuff. I couldn't have green teas. So if you want an alternative to chocolate, because it's nice to have a treat, you can use things like algarobas, like a white carob. They're still very high in sugar, so be aware, even though it's natural sugar, algaroba is about 50% sugar, so use them sparingly. But carob is also another beautiful form of, it's got that chocolatey type taste, slightly different, but then it's a good alternative. But of course, they're really dense with nutrients as well. You've got a lot of minerals within them. Very calming also for the nervous system, and that's what's been overstimulated often with electromagnetic frequencies, is the nervous system. Chlorella is one of the best, and now when I'm at my laptop, for example, I'll have a couple of tablets every time I'm at my laptop, and they've got to be broken cell wall, because the body can't digest them properly otherwise. This can be very good for heavy metal detox as well, that we highlighted earlier. So if you're concerned that you've got too many heavy metals, you can get specific heavy metal detox like herbal kits and stuff, but chlorella is one of the ones that can really help to take those heavy metals out of the body. It's a real superfood. It's packed. So naturopathic techniques, this is something that you may want to do under the guidance of a practitioner, but I'm just going to give you an overview of them. And if you're familiar with them, by all means, try them out, or try them out again. But these are some of the things that I use to heal, and also that other people can use to heal. But not only to heal, just to keep us healthy in this day and age, because we've got so much toxicity around us that we really need to up the ante on our health. And so much more than 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. We've got so much more work to do now because of the amount of toxic load in our environment. And that's not being negative, that's just a reality of what we're faced with. Castor oil packs are absolutely phenomenal. And what a castor oil pack is, just briefly, is a non-bleached cotton pad, which you can get from companies like Canella. That's a company that we advise. I'll give you the details later. And castor oil, then getting a good grade castor oil and pouring that over the unbleached cotton, then putting it on the area, usually on the liver, definitely starting with the liver. If there's somewhere else to use it, then doing it after you've done three packs on the liver. And a pack would be for an hour every night for 3 nights. That's what usually we recommend. You can do it as a one-off. Usually we recommend it to do it for 3 nights and then finish with an enema on the 4th morning. It's not compulsory, but it's really good to release any toxicity that we may have released into our system from the castor oil pack. Can release through an enema then. Again, like some of this stuff you may have to do under the guidance of a practitioner. But you can also use castor oil just as a rub as well. And you can rub it all over your body, for example, before going into a bath. And some people, and I particularly did, have a bit of a spiritual experience with it, to be honest with you. It was a very meditative experience. It's a very powerful oil, and it feels like, I always tell people, having a castor oil pack is just like a cwtch, a nice Welsh word. It's like a cuddle. And it's very nurturing. So if you are going to do a castor oil pack, set aside an hour and really relax, read a book, or whether you're watching a film, whatever, then just having some meditation time, you can really start to get more benefits from that pack as well. What the castor oil does is it brings the light energy back into the cells. Oftentimes when we've got chronic health, the cells have gone dark because there's no light getting to them, or energy effectively from foods or from the sun, for example. But what the castor oil does is actually brings the whole spectrum of light back in. It's a clear liquid, but it's got a full spectrum of light. So it brings all that light back into the liver, back into the cells, and really starts to enlighten us from the inside out. And if you wanted any, so Dr. Edgar Casey, he was a big propagator of castor oil, and he used to do like healings with people. And oftentimes he would recommend castor oil. So if you want to do any research around it, Dr. Edward Casey and Barbara Wren propagates it. Obviously we do as well, the School of Naturopathic Nutrition. Hot and cold therapy. It's been made famous by Wim Hof, but before Wim Hof came on the scene, Emma was telling me about hot and cold therapy, and there's many different ways of doing that. One of the ways I do it is through hot and cold showers. That's very easy. We can all do that. It's free. And it's very, very powerful as well. Just because some of these things are free doesn't mean they're not potent or powerful or cleansing. So what a hot and cold shower does is, if you start on hot, for example, or warm, and then for 1 minute, 60 seconds, and then go cold for 30 seconds, hot, 1 minute, cold, 30 seconds. Just repeat that 3 times, finishing on cold always. Sometimes in the night I finish on warm, just to have that relaxation, because it's really awakening as well. So if you're feeling like you've been working with clients, or you need to have a clearing or something, then it's very good to use cold therapy, or water actually, to cleanse. But hot and cold therapy in particular then really helps the toxicity to come from inside to outside, because the cold makes the blood go internally into all the organs, because it needs to look after the organs because of the cold outside. So it needs to warm up everything inside the organs, the important ones. So that in the extremities, that's why your hands and your feet and stuff go cold, because the body's looking after the important organs. Then with the heat, it just raises to the surface. The blood comes back to the surface again to release the heat. But with that, it brings the toxicity and releases it through a third lung, which the Chinese call the skin. So sometimes the Chinese call it the third lung. So then we can release some of that toxicity then from the hot. So that's a phenomenal one that I love. And there's a client of ours which has opened a cryotherapy in Swansea. I think there's one in Bridgend as well. That's another way of doing it, the cold therapy side. And of course you've got hot tubs, you've got saunas you can use for the hot. But I like to use the hot and cold together, because we tend to emphasize the hot, but sometimes not as much the cold. Of course, that depends on your own body type as well. If you've already got a very cold body type, it may not be such a good idea to be doing so much of the cold therapy, or just doing it gently to start off with. And of course, if you've got any heart trouble and things like that, there are contraindications. Skin brushing, very simple technique. Again, it's very cheap. You just need just like a bath brush, for example. And then brushing always back to the heart. So brushing the arms back to the heart and over the shoulders, always going towards the heart. And what that does is it stimulates the system so that we can release toxicity through the skin. It takes off the old skin and opens up the skin so that we can detox, because we've got a lot of old skin which sometimes we don't get rid of. So that really helps to get rid of that, and it also stimulates the system so we can help with our circulation. Epsom salt baths are phenomenal, and you can use like 500 grams to a kilo even sometimes of Epsom salt baths, and I wouldn't recommend that to start off with. Maybe start with a cup or 250 milligrams and then 500 milligrams just to see how it goes, because it's quite potent. And the magnesium, Epsom salts is magnesium in essence, so when the magnesium goes into the body it can push out the salt, so just be mindful of that, because you can get like itchy skin and stuff after it, and it pushes the negative toxicity out. One thing, when I talk about salts, one thing I want to emphasize is bad salt and how toxic it can be to the body. That's your conventional bleached table salt. So definitely take that out of your diet, because it's very dehydrating and it can really affect like water absorption. So it's like I say, it's very toxic, interrupts with our hydration. And using things like pink Himalayan salt, or if you're in the UK, using Celtic salts, and trying to get them as close to nature as possible. A lot of them have been dyed these days, so very, very important. And salt is so important because the array of minerals it's got in it to help, like I said earlier, about the natural electromagnetic frequency which are going through the body, to help those frequencies to transmit throughout the body, like our thought processes, for example. They can really be helped by having a lot of good minerals. Okay, and then movement and exercise, of course, everybody knows, even conventionally, they suggest 3 times a week, at least 30 minutes, whether it's brisk walking, and that's the word I was looking for earlier with skin brushing, is aiding the lymph. I couldn't find the word. So aiding the lymph in removal of toxicity. And of course, as we're moving, the more we move, like kids move naturally, don't they? We've got a lot more sedentary just in our modern day life. We've got used to being more sedentary, especially now in our houses. But so just consciously moving, like I'm doing this from a stand-up desk, and I do most of my work from a stand-up desk, so that I'm not sitting down when I'm working, and I keep moving. Like when I'm talking to you now, I'm moving a lot. So if we do have to work on a laptop for a lot of time during the day, or just trying to change our environment so it's more ergonomic, so that it's better for us structurally as well. So I'm always trying to make sure that I've got a good posture and stuff when I'm working as well, because you can easily slouch when you're sat down, but when you're standing up, generally it's much easier to keep the posture right. So whatever type of exercise, yoga of course is an excellent one, and you get ticking so many boxes with yoga. There's got the movement, we've got the spiritual aspect, pranayama, so you breathe. The breathing is very, very important, and we'll get onto that a bit later on. So grounding has become very popular, and there's so many different grounding films you can watch now which go into depth about it. But in essence, when you're walking on grass, Mother Earth supplies us with positive energy. And antioxidants, I believe, electrons. So when we're walking on Earth, we're not, or sand, anything that covers the Earth basically, generally not like synthetic things, for example. So you're not going to get this obviously from things like fake grass, which is so much of that now, but real grass, getting on the sand, getting your feet in the earth, that will release the EMFs from the body, excess EMFs from the body, but also you're getting the benefit from Mother Earth as well. So yeah, it's a win-win. I can't emphasize this enough for EMFs. So if you're struggling with EMFs, or if you're around EMFs a lot, just even if it's just 5, 10, 15 minutes after you've been on the laptop or phone, at least once a day, trying to get your feet on the ground. There's some sandals and footwear you can get. I recommend barefoot now, and unfortunately some of them are synthetic, but so they're not as earthing, but you've got earthing ones now, like Earth Runners, for example. They're sandals which are grounded. So even though we've got footwear now, which has got rubber underneath, you can still have ones which are earthed, so you can still ground even if you can't get your bare feet on the floor. You can earth your footwear or buy earthed footwear. And then there's straps and sheets. So one thing I want to emphasize about the straps and the sheets is that I noticed when I was putting my straps on that when I was working on my laptop, that sometimes I got worse when I had the straps on. I couldn't understand it. I thought this is supposed to be grounded. One of the things is it depends where you're using them, because you use the mains plug in within the house usually. You can put a rod in outside the back, for example. I got a grounding rod outside the back. It's in the ground. And then that line comes straight up to our bedroom, and sometimes I use the mat then, or the strap in the bedroom. That's the best way. Alternatively, most, if not all houses, I think it's a legal requirement in the UK, they've got to have an earth. So when you put a plug in, it finds the earth and then it uses it that way. But one thing to be conscious of is like making sure that we're switching these things off, which I'm going to be telling you in a bit, especially in the night, because if we've got Wi-Fi, or if we've got a lot of EMFs in our bedroom, for example, and we're putting these things on, then electricity, you're probably aware, finds the quickest way to earth. So we can become that conductor. So it still has to go through us then in order to get to the earth, because we're the fastest way to get to the earth then. And it finds the fastest way. So we don't want to be the fastest way to earth. Just being aware of that when we're using grounding sheets and straps. I'm not saying they're not good, they're fantastic, but just being aware of that point. Colonic irrigation or enemas, Dr. Talwa in Cardiff or in other areas, colonic irrigation is phenomenal. Really good to get the toxicity out of the colon. Sometimes we've got like a lot of stuff clogged up in there for many years if we haven't done any of this stuff. Enemas then is another way of doing that, and we can introduce many different things through enemas, not just water. That's really hydrating, and that's why they use some tablets through the rectum, because they're hyper-absorbed in that area. So if we're putting nice good quality water through an enema, then that's going to really help to hydrate the colon and our bodies and release any toxicity. Then there's coffee enemas, of course. So I'm not going to go into depth about this. Do your research, but also, like I say, see a practitioner if you want to know more about that. Fasting, I can't emphasize enough as well. You've got to be in quite a good state of health in order to do a full fast, but there's many different forms of fasting we can do to take the stress off the body. So we can do a fruit fast, for example. So let's go in order. So a full fast is no water. It's a dry fast, no water, no food. And there's varying lengths of them. Wouldn't recommend that unless you've done fasting before under the guise of a practitioner or doctor even. Then, of course, you can do just a water fast. Very potent, very powerful. Sometimes people do them for long periods of time. And I wouldn't recommend that again unless you're under a practitioner. But we can do these for shorter periods. Don't even have to do it for the whole day. If you can do it for the whole day, great. But just toying with it for even the morning, for example, and then going into your normal diet after that, or a light diet. And then you can do fasts of things like you could do a fruit fast, you can do a juice fast, you can do a grain and pulses fast. It's called the Kadashi, for example, in the Vedic tradition. And that really helps to take the weight off or the toxic load, but not only that, the energy of the body can be utilized for healing then instead of digesting. You find you'll have a lot more time on your hands and clarity of thought is much better. Most mornings I fast and just have like a matcha tea, matcha latte, say for breakfast. I know it's not full fast because you've got the plant milk, but with no sugars, you still then getting that digestion. So it's burning off any of the excess stuff. And what the body does is it eats up all of the bad cells when you fast for long enough. It starts eating up all the bad cells. There's something called intermittent fasting you may be aware of right now. It's quite popular. It's something I tend to do most days. I find it's really beneficial for my digestive system. I feel like I'm much lighter in my being. I feel like it's easier for me to keep weight off, for example. And I just feel clearer and more focused when I'm working. So look into fasting as well, because it can eat up the bad cells that we've got in our body, and it can also help to really burn the toxicity. So supplementation. So there's many different supplements which help with electromagnetic frequency radiation. Magnesium is one. I hope you're all still with me. I know there's a lot of information, but I wanted to get as much as possible into this because is such an important subject. So magnesium citrate, I'm really passionate about it, so I hope the passion and energy is coming through and helping to keep you awake while I'm going through all these things. Magnesium citrate, you can start with 200 milligrams per day, but you can build up to about 600 milligrams per day, again, depending upon what your history is. But one of the only contraindications with magnesium is loose bowels if you've gone too far. And likewise with vitamin C as well. So just be mindful of that and start with 200 milligrams or even 100 and build it up gently. And a lot of us are magnesium deficient. There's many books out there now which say it's one of the common deficiencies in the world today, because the ground, like I said earlier, is very deficient. So it's very calming, very soothing, and it's used up a lot by EMF radiation. So when we start to introduce that into our diet, it's very calming for the system, very calming for the muscles. If we're doing a lot of exercise as well, this is a brilliant one. There's one out there, I believe, called something like Magnesium Calm, and oh, it's beautiful, really, really nice supplement. So with supplements, what we always recommend is using ones which actually make a difference, because it sounds simple, but there's so many different supplements we can take, and just taking them because they're supposed to be good for us is not what we recommend. We recommend taking supplements which we can feel something tangible and it's making a difference. Just while I'm on that, I didn't introduce things like herbs into this, but one of the herbal teas is very good for this is chamomile. Very, very calming, lovely to take in the evening, not when you've got things to do. Hemp, of course, and CBD. That's another thing that I didn't put on this list, which is very good. CBD is also very good for this, and it's very calming because oftentimes the nervous system has been really, really affected by the amount of, and you may feel wired sometimes when you've been on a laptop or a mobile phone for a long time. You can feel wired, and so that's what these things really help to calm, bring back the calm back to the system. Vitamin C, you can take very high quantities of vitamin C, and like I say, loose bowels is one of the so as soon as you get to the point of loose bowels, that's your limit. But in general, we recommend like 1,000 to 2,000 milligrams per day. There's many other different antioxidants, but vitamin C is one of the best ones. We'll go into some other ones later on. And companies you can get them from as well. Canella is a company we recommend. Multi-B complex is very good for the nervous system. 100 milligram B complex. So the B's really help with the nervous system when it's been overwhelmed. P5P is B6. That's particularly good for electromagnetic radiation and also chronic fatigue type symptoms. So vitamin D, again, you can take high quantities. In the summer, obviously trying to get it from the sun. We don't want to supplement too much on things, especially if we don't need them. But in the winter, we're starved of good quality sunshine in the UK. So in the winter, it's almost a given that we need to be taking a vitamin D supplement. And if you're taking high quantities, it needs to be with K, because vitamin D uses K when it's been absorbed. So you may need to introduce a vitamin K supplement with the vitamin D in order to help it get digested, and make sure you're not getting depleted with the K as well. Zinc, 15 milligrams at bedtime. Zinc is an antioxidant as well. So with EMF cause oxidative stress. So the more antioxidants we can get into a system, the better. Through foods, ideally, and raw foods. However, sometimes we haven't got the quantities within those foods, so we need to supplement. And again, I'm saying this is the stuff that I did over a period of 2 years initially, but in its entirety, it's been about 7 or 8 years since I've healed myself of electro hypersensitivity. So again, we're not doing all of this stuff right away. We're introducing these things bit by bit. And like I said, you can't substitute seeing a practitioner to help with that on a monthly, weekly, or bi-monthly sessions, so they can help you with that. Zeolite is particularly good for removal of radiation from the body. It's got a cage-like structure, and there's a crystal I'm going to be talking about later, which has got that too, but it's got a cage-like structure. And when we take zeolite, it's from volcanic, it's like a volcanic ash. when we take that, it can really help to take the radiation out of the body. So it's a very good one. And 5-HTP helps with the sleep cycle and oxidative stress, particularly the melatonin cycle. So it helps us to create melatonin. Melatonin helps us to sleep deeply, but also helps with the oxidative stress that we've accumulated during the day. Iodine is essential because it gets used up a lot with EMF radiation. There's an interesting fact, which I'm saying fact, but it's only come on my radar recently, so take it or leave it. But it's very interesting that one particular person has come up with this. He hasn't come up with it. He's into biological things. He studied biology, and he said that the Wi-Fi of 2.5 gigahertz is at the level of absorption of water. So 2.5 gigahertz affects the absorption of water, which is really interesting. It's very important, of course. Then 6 gigahertz, he says, affects the absorption of iodine. That's what I'm saying about it. So it's really interesting that 2.5 gigahertz and 6 gigahertz are two of the ones they tend to use. Why would they use those ones? And apparently they relate to the cycles of water, the spin cycles of water and iodine. And then 60 gigahertz, which is going to be 5G up to 60 gigahertz, so that's going to be the main frequency apparently, is to do with oxygen. And of course, what a lot of people are experiencing now is oxygen shortage, and it's to do with the absorption of oxygen in the body. So that's a really interesting fact. Like I said, I don't know if it's definitely fact. I need to do more research on it, just making you aware of that. But iodine is very, very important. And you can get that from food sources. It's very potent. It can cause a detox effect. So be aware if you're taking something like Lugol's iodine, it can have a detox effect, because what it does is it pushes out from the thyroid. We store up things like chlorine, bromine, the negative chemicals, and the body utilizes them instead of iodine. If we haven't got enough, obviously it's got a negative effect. So it pushes those into the system, and they're toxic for our system. So just be mindful of that if you're taking it, again, under the guidance of a practitioner ideally, or you can just introduce it mildly with things like chlorella. It's in a lot of algae, spirulina, and sushi, for example. The sheets of sushi have got them as well. So the sheets of seaweed for the sushi, or you can buy now, little packs of them. So yeah, that's really good and really important. So personal care and cleaning, I'm just going to brush over this part. So it's natural deodorants, getting away from the aluminium ones. The spray ones have often got aluminium in them, and using natural source deodorants that haven't got the chemicals. Generally, we say if you can't say it or if you can't pronounce it, then we shouldn't be putting it on our body. So sometimes even if you wouldn't eat it, then don't put it on your body. Because of course the skin absorbs anyway. Like I said, it's like our third lung, so it absorbs a lot of this stuff. So just be mindful, ladies especially, or men, makeup these days, or with makeup as well, just being aware of the toxic levels in makeup. Trying to go organic with them, organic and natural body washes and soaps. Of course, fluoride-free toothpaste can't be emphasized enough, especially if you want to connect spiritually. Then the third eye is very important, and it's important to keep that clear, and fluoride actually calcifies that. It calcifies not only that, different organs in our body as well. So ideally using a fluoride-free toothpaste, and house cleaning products, you go in as natural as possible, and of course detergents and stuff for our clothes. This all helps to lower the cumulative effect of toxicity that we've got in this day and age. So this is, out of all that I've said, especially in relation to protecting yourself from electromagnetic frequencies, the most important is to take control of your own environment. There may be environments you can't control, like externally, or if we've got a mast right outside, for example, but one thing we can definitely take control of is our own environments to a certain extent. Like I said, if you've got a mast, or if you've got these lights outside and stuff, to a certain extent we can't, but in general we can, like if we're walking around or in our house, we can switch it off, ideally switching Wi-Fi off altogether. using Ethernet cables. I should have put a picture of an Ethernet cable, but I'm sure most of you know what they are. Some like devices haven't got Ethernet capabilities, but you can actually buy adapters so they can connect to the Ethernet, and then you can switch Wi-Fi off on the device. Because Wi-Fi, like I said, usually it's on 2.4 gigahertz, and that intercepts with the water absorption. Not only that, it just affects our natural cycles within the body, because it's not a natural form of radiation that we should be having generally. So using Ethernet is the best. Using cabled internet and switching the Wi-Fi off at the router is the best, if you can. I do appreciate people live with different family members and stuff, or kids or whatever, that are using it. But if you can do that, that's the best. Like, for example, in the office upstairs in our house, we've run a cable from downstairs. We've got an old BT engineer to come out. He drilled a hole upstairs in the office and run a cable, then an Ethernet cable upstairs, going outside, then inside, and coming in, so we can have internet upstairs and downstairs, but just off wired rather than using Wi-Fi. Because that's why some people use this for convenience. If you can't get away from that, then you can get things like a Faraday cage I heard the other day. I'll tell you what a Faraday cage is later. We can get one of those to go over the internet. I'll tell you lots of other things you can do to protect that. But ideally, switching off altogether. If you can't do that, just switch off in the night. And you can get a timer for that. You can get a plug-in timer, and then you can set it, for example, from 12 p.m. in the night to 8 a.m. in the morning, whatever your sleep is. You can switch it off, because when you're sleeping, you don't need it, right? Switching your mobile phone off, and definitely not even off airplane mode, off altogether, and definitely away from the bedroom. It's very, very important. And then, because, like I said, it affects the sleep cycle and affects the melatonin cycle, which will help you to protect yourself naturally, because our body can naturally do this. It's just we've taken ourselves so far away from nature that we've got to implement these different strategies now. Airplane mode, when you're not using your mobile phone, trying your best not to have it on your person. Most people have got it in their pockets, especially if you're trying if fertility is an issue, then this can be one of the big things, is just to, guys, stop carrying in your pockets, and women, but carrying in your bag, and better still, put it in a pouch even, which blocks electromagnetic radiation. You can get them off eBay just for a few quid. And when you put them in a certain slot, there's blocking material around it, so it stops all radiation emitting from the phone when it's in your pocket, for example. But of course, the easy way to do that is just to switch it off. It's just we got used to having these things on all the time. I can't emphasize this enough. It's really important to take control of our own environments and not to overuse or use these things, but use them consciously. And remembering that distance is your friend. Again, if you can't get away from it, then making sure that the Wi-Fi router is as far away as possible from your bedroom. Definitely not having it inside the bedroom. I understand if you're in a bed sit or something, that could be difficult, and then you may have to look at doing a Faraday cage or going down the Ethernet route, like I was saying. But yeah, trying to keep as far away as possible from these devices. Someone recently, a client, was working on the computer, but working right next to a Wi-Fi router. So an easy way to rectify that is just literally switch the Wi-Fi off on the router, or call the company sometimes, run an Ethernet cable to your device, and you're sitting there, but you're not bathing in you've got some radiation from the computer, but it's the Wi-Fi frequencies which are a lot more potent than just the standard frequencies you get from the devices. So trying to be conscious of that, and just remembering that, especially if you're spending so much money on supplements and good food and organic food and stuff, that's getting depleted from these things, whether we're aware of it or not. So yeah, just be mindful of that. I wanted to emphasize that quite a lot. I said with the Ethernet, this is what this guy I was telling you about says. Again, I'm paraphrasing him, so I don't know this for certain, but he said that if it's got 802.11 AD on the back of a router, that is 5G enabled Wi-Fi. So using, and on that note as well, I checked out on my phone, it hasn't got 5G capability on it. So if you get an upgrade and stuff, possibly go in for an upgrade without 5G. So at least you know your devices will not have 5G. Definitely not using those Bluetooth headsets, because that can then attract these frequencies to our head. And of course, we want to be taking those things away from like our head, our heart, and the important organs in the body. So if we're going to use headsets, using the wired headsets or even air headsets, which haven't even got a wire, and they transmit I didn't get on with them, to be honest, when I was sensitive. Maybe I would now. I felt like it was still affecting me. Even the wired ones would affect me as well when I had electromagnetic hypersensitivity. But now I use the headset ones, and a lot of celebrities are using that now as well. So just be mindful of that Wi-Fi as well, because we could unknowingly be emitting 5G radiation into our environment. So Faraday cage is something that stops radiation from entering it, in essence. You can see this is just a picture of it. But it's not always a cage. It can be a material which stops electricity from entering it, basically, in essence. So it stops electromagnetic radiation, like foil does it, for example, or you can get materials which do it. And some people advocate using like mosquito nets, but with that material. So if you can't get away from Wi-Fi radiation, just creating a Faraday cage around your bed so that you know that you're sleeping in a EMF safe space. You can put even paint on walls as well, which protects, because it's got metals in it, can protect from EMF radiation coming in. But just be mindful that if we're using things like this, if we're in a Faraday cage and we're using a device inside that Faraday cage, those electromagnetic frequencies are then bouncing around within that. So just be mindful that we're not using things within that if we go into that extent. A lot of you won't have to go to that extent. Like when I was ill, I wanted to go to a retreat. I was so bad at one point, where they have literally caravans which are covered in foil or Faraday cages, basically, so there's no Wi-Fi radiation getting in there. But hopefully you won't need to go to that extent. Some ways to protect are things like orgonite pyramids or prana pyramids. These, we've got a couple of these in the house. We love them. We take them to our classes with us. And you can see the wire there. You can't see they're connected to a generator, and then you can input different frequencies into that. So 5 to 8 is known as the heart frequency, and then there's different frequencies then for each chakra, if you like, or each organ beneath the chakra system, or each gland more so beneath, because each chakra system has got a gland beneath it as well. So the spiritual always affects us on the physical as well. So what this does is, like I was saying about protecting your own house, is you can set these up inside your house, plug it in, and then emit whatever frequency you choose. Like there's ones which are good for relationships, a myriad of things. There's something called, I think it was Carl Reif that started using these things. So like I said earlier about people using these things negatively, like Albert Einstein said that this is going to be the next generation of healing. This is particularly beautiful. I've got a nice relationship with this now. I didn't think I'd have a relationship with a pyramid or with crystals like this, but I really have connected with this. I suppose that's the best word. I love it. So you can get in touch with us. We supply these if you do want to. They are a bit higher end as far as price wise. And orgonite, I didn't say what orgonite does. It's 50% organic and 50% inorganic material. Some of the material is metal, as you can see, and it's got crystals in it. And what happens is the resin compresses the crystals and the metal together, and somehow or other that creates prana or energy. And you've got different devices you can use to test that as well. So it emits a positive energy and kind of puts a force field around you, so you don't get affected so much by these negative things. So having something like this quite close to you when you're working, I suggest putting it off if you're working with it closely, but then using it at a safe distance. So if you're emitting it into your house, for example, not sitting right next to it, you can meditate with it and do different things like that. But in general as well, what I've noticed is sometimes to even keep a distance from this and not being right next to it, because the electromagnetic frequencies, even though they're positive ones, can still have a little bit of an effect on the body. But in general, I've got a Rodin coil in there as well, which I haven't said, and you can see that there's a quartz crystal with a coil around it at the top. So this really helps to emit the frequency. I'm not going to go into depth about it. You can do some research on orgonite if you like. It's Wilhelm Reich was the founder of orgonite, and he propagated a lot of materials. There's a lot of positive stuff, there's some negative stuff, so make your own mind up around that. You do some muscle testing as well, or kinesiology, to see if it's right for you. Let's see. If for some reason that's not working. Right. So orgonite pendants, then we supply these pendants, you can see, and I like all of them, particularly like these turquoise and pink ones, and they're made by somebody. He actually makes like magic tools, so he uses sacred geometry in these, and you can utilize them to program them for things like the law of attraction, or program them for ultimate health. And like I was saying earlier, these things are emitting positive energy, and if you're wearing one of these like Emma's wearing there, then it helps to keep our bodies in balance, even though there's so much of this stuff going on externally. And important, one thing that I missed, I said about headsets and stuff. So when we're out and about, if 5G does get propagated in your area or places where you're walking around, just be mindful of switching off smart devices around them so that you're not attracting or becoming an antenna for those frequencies. Alternatively, then, putting these types of things on the body in order to protect and give us extra strength for our own immunity and our own force field, our natural force field. So these are just helping to harness natural energy, more subtle energies, but natural energies, so that we can build up our natural immune systems. I've tried loads of different pendants over time. These are some of the best that I've found, and that's why we sell these ones, basically, because there's lots of stuff out there, and you've probably known already if you've looked into this market. There's a massive market now. Some are good, some aren't, some don't do anything. Some things can make you worse even. So again, it's important to connect with it and see if it's right for you, and ways you can do that is through muscle testing or kinesiology. Get a kinesiologist to do that for you even before buying something, for example. That could be helpful. BioArc is something I've come across recently, and interestingly enough, when I put one of these on my phone, I can send you a link to this. I've affiliated with them. I'll send you a link to this after the webinar, or if you're watching this after the webinar, I'll put it beneath the video somewhere. And the reason being is because when I opened it and looked at it, I was like, wow, it was really emitting energy. I could feel like there was a good energy coming from it. It sounds a bit out there, a bit woo, I know. And Emma said actually that when she feels sensitive to my phone sometimes, and since I've had that on it, it's really helped to minimize that that sensitivity she doesn't feel when my phone is on now, whereas she could feel if it was on and she was in the house, she could feel it. So you can get them for your phone, and then you can also, I haven't tried the pendants, so I'm not going to advise the pendants, but I've got one of these discs on order as well. So again, you can go over the top on these things. I'm particularly passionate about them. I'm passionate about finding the right ones for our clients. So this is why I buy so many of them and do so much research on them. But if you've got a limited budget, for example, finding the ones which are right for you. Like there's an offer where you can get those ones on your phone for like $2.99, just pay the shipping, for example. So it's not much, and you don't have to buy things. That's the important thing to recognize here. You don't have to buy things, but I think sometimes we do need to up the ante just because of the amount of radiation that's around us. But we've all got different levels of that depending upon how much we use this technology, etc. Zappers are another good way to help clean up our system, because they emit a square wave frequency of 15 hertz into the body, which helps to alkalize and purify the blood. So it takes away a negative environment so when we're really acidic, for example, that's when we attract things like parasites and viruses into the body to help clean it up. That actually the body is always working for us, always. So all this thing around fears, around viruses and bacteria and stuff, our body is always working for us, and when it's inviting those things into it, it's to clean those areas up. It's because we've got too much acidity, for example. So what this does is helps to take that environment away, alkalize the body so that we don't get as much parasites and bad bacteria or even attracting viruses to clean up the body. The Terminator 2 contains organite within it. It's got a magnet and crystal within it as well. So there's a difference in price. The basic is like £45 and the Terminator 2 is like 140, and it's just because the extra bits and bobs it's got in it. They're more expensive to buy in as well. We can supply these. You can get them online as well. If you need help with any of these stuff, this isn't a sales thing. It's just the things that I've come to know which actually work, which do something to me and clients. That's why we recommend them. And that's why we provide them as well, because some of them can be quite hard to come by. So let us know if you're interested in any of them. I could do a whole session on this hydrogen. We're running out of time, but I could do a whole session on hydrogen. It's phenomenal stuff, and it's one of the best findings I've had. Last year, sometime I found it, and it makes common sense, really. What I always say when I'm teaching is that what are the most important nutrients? So usually what I say is, how long can we go without food for? And it's usually about 30 days. How long without water? It's usually about 3 days. And how long without oxygen? It's just 3 minutes. So you can see which ones are most important. So out of that, oxygen is most important, then water, and then food. But one of the things I was missing was hydrogen. And this is like the little miracle. It is what powers the sun. It's in most things. It's some people call it the father of all elements. It's number 1 on the periodic table. And it's the smallest of all things. So it gets everywhere. Like the Carlsberg advert, I don't drink, but like the Carlsberg advert, it gets to places that other waters can't, or other things can't, other elements can't. And it is phenomenal. And I've had a fantastic experience with it. If you're interested in this stuff, this is a company that I know, and I may be able to get some for you. They're quite pricey now, and they're going up in price. I've noticed on Amazon the different makes of these stuff, the different brands. In general, they range from 45 to £70 for a tub, something like that. And you get 60, so you could take 2 a day, for example, be about a month's supply. You could take 1 a day and have 2 months supply. And these are particularly potent because they provide 10 parts per million of hydrogen. You just pop them in, they're effervescent. You pop them into your water. Purer water, the better. And then you take it, but you can just put it into tap water if you haven't got a filter, for example. And it's an antioxidant, so it's very, very important for this time. I think even more important than vitamin C personally, for the reason that it can get to places that other things like that are bigger, like vitamin C, for example, then sometimes it can't get into the places that it needs to do the help, to do the antioxidant effect. It's anti-inflammatory effects it's got also, and there's still lots of research to be done on it, but there's over 1,000 papers which are promoting it, saying that it's helped, the peer-reviewed studies, and it helps with over 170 different disease processes in animals and humans. So it helps basically every organ in your body. Phenomenal stuff, very hydrating. I've noticed my skin is a lot better. It's very good for anti-aging, for example. This picture next to it, if anyone's not familiar, is like dry blood analysis before and after. So these are your blood cells and they're coagulating. That's what Wi-Fi does actually to your blood when you're around it. But after taking the H2, you can see they're all separated. That's how they're supposed to be. They're supposed to be free-flowing and separated. When they start coagulating like they are in the top picture, that's when we can start to invite in chronic illness. So it's important to try and keep them separate, and this is one of the things that helps that. Like I said, if you're interested or if you want some guidance, drop me a message, or maybe I'll send you a message out. If you're watching this afterwards, I'll put a link beneath where you can get some of these. You don't only get it from tablets, you can get it from generators. It's called like a generator, this is. And we've partnered with a company they're called the Hydrogen Mini, the Recure Hydrogen Mini. This is a higher end one. You can get them cheaper on things like Amazon. This is more like €400, I believe. But you can get them on Amazon from like £65 to and upwards basically. But make sure if you are going elsewhere for them, that you're getting SPE PEM technology. So it's SPE/PEM technology. And that makes sure that it doesn't create any harmful chemicals within the process. It's vital, because I had a bottle when I was first trying this out. And I was thinking, that smells of chlorine. I was thinking, that's not right. So I ended up sending that bottle back. And I did some more research and found out that obviously that was so there's a lot of these things come from China, and some people, or manufacturers, they're aware of this, but they don't necessarily care. So yeah, you may be getting the hydrogen, but you're also going to get a negative effect. So it's important to know which ones to use. Obviously, this is a good one. It's a higher end one. It looks neat. It's very attractive. It's stainless steel, but like I say, it is higher end on the price wise, but you pay for what you get, like anything else really. Higher end again is the hydroxy machine. And like I said, you don't need to do anything like this. You can use pranayama, for example. If you're on a budget, use pranayama and deep breathing exercises to get more oxygen into your body. It's becoming more and more vital to get more oxygen into our body, because first of all, we haven't got as much around us. But also then things like 5G can affect the amount of oxygen absorption. So hydroxy machines, again, we haven't got one of these. Out of transparency, we haven't got one of these yet. We're going to be getting one soon. They're higher end. They're over £3,000. They're between £3,000 and £4,000, or €4,000, for example, per machine. But what you do is you inhale, and it's a mixture of oxygen. I think it's 66% oxygen, 33% hydrogen, I believe, or the other way around. And it's very effective for healing fast, for anti-aging. And of course, whatever's anti-aging is usually good for health as well. We're not doing it just for looks, we're doing it for health. So anything that's working well from an anti-aging perspective is also going to be good for your health, because it's going to be healing you from the inside out, literally. So we are, by volume, 62% hydrogen. This is a really good fact. We're 62% hydrogen by volume, 24% oxygen, 12% carbon, and 2% everything else. So George Wiseman, the founder of these machines, says that we're focusing, when we're supplementing, usually on the 2% of everything else. So why aren't we focusing on the hydrogen, which we are most of by volume? So it's a very important fact, and actually we know that hydrogen helps us under stress from deep sea divers, for example. And for many years have been using a mixture of oxygen and hydrogen. However, the deeper they get, they use more hydrogen rather than oxygen. So when the body's under stress, it utilizes a lot of hydrogen. So this is what we can use, especially if we're in chronic health, or even if we want to just remain really healthy. If you're a health freak like us, then these are some things that can help. I'm just giving you an overview of everything. Like I say, it's not a sales pitch. It's just sharing some of the more up-to-date research I've done. I'm really passionate about. Get in touch if you're interested. Orgone water bottles. I created these myself because I couldn't find a bottle which I really liked, basically, and which had if you're familiar with Dr. Emoto's work, the Japanese researcher, doctor, scientist, he's passed away now, unfortunately, but he did some studies on ice and important. I know a lot of you are familiar with this, but the importance of, on a microscopic level, the particles in water and the effect that the environment has on them. So he gave like loving frequencies to one and then hateful frequencies to another. So for example, like classical music or mantras to one, and then give like heavy metal to the other, for example, or depressing music to the other, for example. And then he saw under a microscope that it really changed the structure of the water. So again, like I'm saying, you don't need to spend a lot of money in order to do that. You can change the structure of water by being innovative. You can find, I'm going to be talking about binaural beats and mantras from your laptops or devices. So if you play these mantras in the environment, these binaural beats, these soothing music, then that has an effect on us, because we're 80% water. We're like a liquid crystal, basically. So if we can form those crystals within ourselves, but also take on water, which is structured like that, then it's going to absorb better into our body. It's going to hydrate us deeper. And what, I'll get on to it actually in another slide, but I provide these bottles, and the reason being it's got a sacred yantra on the front, which is a physical representation of a sound vibration. It's an ancient sound vibration, which is very potent, or sacred geometry, if you like. It's got a mantra across the top, which was written by my guru, and then guru just means teacher, basically. I took initiation from him, and anyway, he gave me that when I took initiation, and then I had it digitalized and put it onto this water, because that will then create a frequency into the water, which is going to actually transform the water. Rose quartz crystals and an orgonite in the bottom of the glass, so that again emitting more frequencies, and you can't see in this picture, but on top of the orgonite I usually put a Sri Yantra as well, so it's got a powerhouse to charge your water up with. And yeah, like I say, I can supply those. I've got some left as well of those if anyone's interested. I just want to highlight Dr. Patrick Flanagan's work, and I bought this book recently. A client of ours advised it, and it's fantastic. I realized it was in our attic actually after I bought it, but anyway, so I got a spare copy if anybody wants to read. And Elixir of the Ageless, you are what you drink. And he spent about 20 years trying to find the ideal water to drink. And this is from the Hunza tribe, I believe, Hunza people in Georgia and Russia, I believe. Don't quote me on that, I've only just read the book. And what he found was a lot of those were living over 100 years. And he was trying to replicate, he found out that it was the water that was giving them this ageless, not totally ageless, but it was giving them the anti-aging properties. So he tried to replicate that, and what he did, he came up with this product, which is called Crystal Energy. Quite difficult to get hold of. I bought another bottle the other day from, I think it's getting sent from Australia, unfortunately, but what you do is just add 15 drops of that to your water you're drinking, and then it changes the surface tension of the water. Why is that important? Because the lower the surface tension, the more absorbable it is to your body. So he says it creates wetter water. So basically we're going to get more from our water if it's infused with this stuff. And of course I got the vortex in the middle there. Vortexing is very, very important, and that also affects the surface tension of the water. We vortex all of our water we drink. And there's many different ways you can vortex. There's cheap ways you can do it by using what are they called now? The vortex. Send me a message if you're interested. There's like a jug, filter, and it's got like a spring basically within the filter. You pour your water through that, and it basically causes a vortex. Nature causes a vortex naturally when it's coming through streams or through springs. So that's why it's good to get that fresh water. But sometimes we have to restructure the water after it's come through the process of cleaning, because obviously when it's being cleaned with all these chemicals and gone through all the 90 degrees pipes, copper pipes, in order to get to our sometimes plastic pipes, then we need to, and it's picked up water is, again, this could be a whole session on its own, but just for the purpose of this, water, they're proving the water's now got memory, and it's like a liquid crystal or a liquid computer even. So it's very, very important. And if we consume better water, then of course we're hydrating ourselves better, but we're also taking less stress of the body, because our body doesn't have to create those crystals. Some people say, Steiner says, that the heart actually vortexes. It's not a pump, it's a vortex, and it vortexes the blood as it goes through. So if we're consuming water that's already vortex, we're taking another thing away from the body has to do for itself. Just quickly, crystals, there's some amazing crystals. Shungite is one of the best for electromagnetic radiation. Elite is the best quality you can get from Amazon. You can add it to your water to drink. Even you can put crystals, and just a disclaimer, please don't go swallowing it. Do it at your own risk, but you can put it in your drinking water and do your research on shungite water. It'll tell you the exact properties, but in essence, it purifies the water. I'm assuming that it would also affect the surface tension, because when I was listening to Dr. Patrick Flanagan the other day, he was saying the quartz crystal affects the surface tension of water as well. So these are cheaper ways that we can do these types of stuff. So that's why we always try and give different levels of things for every different budget, you know. So you can wear these as bracelets, a pendant, relatively cheap. You can get them for roughly about £13, I think, if you shop around online. Or you can have them as bracelets or pyramids in your house to help against electromagnetic frequencies. Rose quartz, that's why I put them in my bottles. They emit the frequency of love. And again, you can put them in your drinks along with normal quartz as well. That can charge up the water. So it's got more energy in essence and give us more energy. They're known as crystal batteries. Hematite's a good one for grounding as well. So you can wear hematite or have it in the bedroom for grounding. It's good for grounding all around electromagnetic frequencies. Finally, to finish, high vibe mantras and binaural beats. Again, like I said, under studies it's proved that these can structure our blood or our water within our system. So if we're surrounded by these mantras, then we're effectively giving ourselves a force field, if you like, so that these negative frequencies bounce off. So it's very important. And if we can listen to these throughout the day, have them on in the background. Binaural beats is a real good one as well. If you're not into mantras, for example, then you can use binaural beats. Just soothing music in general, things which feel good for you, generally will be good for you, generally. But in particular, these ancient mantras, particularly the Hare Krishna mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, is apparently, according to Vedic science, it holds all of the other mantras. It's called the Maha mantra, or the great mantra for deliverance of the mind from material affliction. So, like Jesus said, we can be in the world, but not of the world. So if we raise our frequency, raise our potency, then we can actually be in amongst all these material things, but actually be raised above it because we're on a different frequency. Thank you so much for listening. I know there's so much information there and there's some resources. So we're just coming up to 2 now. I will take questions after this. I'm sorry I've gone over, but at least you've got, if you had to go to, at least you've got the presentation. Our website is lovenaturopathy.co.uk. Find out about courses and stuff if you want to go into more depth about naturopathic nutrition. We do online courses. We do a rejuvenation course, which we finished online only because of this lockdown, but we do a rejuvenation course. We've got a recorded rejuvenation course, which is like an introduction course to naturopathic approach, go into more depth of what I covered already. We got then a 1 year, 2 year, 3 year diploma course in naturopathic nutrition. We do retreats and stuff where you can go into more depth of this stuff. Obviously, I can only do so much in an hour or so. Cornella is the company I was telling you about, which we recommend for nutrition. You can get a discount if you mention us we're affiliated with them, so you can get a discount if you mention us when you're going online, when you're doing your form online, or when you phone them. So mention Emma, Steve, Jones, Phillips, Emma is, or Phillips for me, and the School of Naturopathic Nutrition. They know us well. Do the same with, I haven't got on here, but it's the water filters, the water filter man, Nigel.co.uk. The waterfilterman.co.uk, his name is Nigel. And yeah, he can help you if you say that we've sent you. We're not really affiliated with him. He gives us some discount on things, but we've just had a good experience with him, so we recommend him. Love Technologies we're not affiliated with, but he's based in Wales, and he's got a lot of this stuff I've been talking about. Ian's very knowledgeable as well, so Ian Griffiths, his name is, if anybody's got any questions around this, good guy to go to. Lloyd Burrell, we've done an interview for Lloyd. He's probably got the most comprehensive website with interviews of experts, like myself and Emma have done an interview on it, but there's many experts around the world. Everyone put in their own slant on it and how it can be helped. Patrick Flanagan, if you wanted to research anymore, that's his website. Phi Sciences. Unfortunately, he passed away December last year, but he's got a wealth of information around this. He spent his life researching all this stuff I'm talking about. Bioinitiative Report is a report of independent scientists which explain about what the negative effects of electromagnetic radiation. So I'm just going to stop the screen share now because that's the end of the slideshow, but I'm just going to look at the comments and see if there's any questions. So thanks. It's good to see you all still there. Oh God, forgive me for talking so much. There's so much to cover. So it's lovely to see you all. Farah, Kari, Lydia, Lulu, you made it to the end. Wow. Dina Bacter, Holly, Keely, Sally, Danielle, Alice, Omar, thumbs up, awesome, Kerry, Lisa Chan. Wow, everybody made it to the end. Hey, Michael, you're there, Mandy. Happy days. Wow, everyone made it to the end practically. Good stuff, guys. So we're just going to look through the chat to see if there's any questions. So this is a point where you can open up your mics and stuff to speak. So yeah, maca latte. Yeah, maca latte is beautiful, Lisa. And I was listening to binaural beats, Lisa Chan, in work this week, and nearly went into another dimension and forgot where I was. Aqua Vortex. Thank you so much, Lisa. Yeah, the Aqua Vortex is the funnel that I was talking about earlier. I couldn't think of the name. That's quite a simple vortexing system. Again, you pay for what you get. It's, you know, you can get one of those for like 15 quid or 45 for the gold one. The silver one or the stainless steel one is £15. That vortex is water, but then you've got a lot more complex. I was speaking on the phone to my supplier in Australia, and he's got like vortexes which you can apply to your water system, which are like £1,000 an app, you know. So there's different levels of this. So it depends to what extent you want to go to, right? Like anything. I'm a health freak. I love all this stuff. There's a great documentary about this, The Secret of Water. Thank you, Holly. That's brilliant. Talks about water memory, right? Drumming music is also very good at helping reduce heavy metal toxicity. Wow, never knew that. I play the drum, actually. Thank you so much. If you've got any more info around that, that'd be amazing. Whether it's now or to share. I didn't know that would affect meth. See, the ancient techniques have got it sorted, and there's drumming in most ancient techniques, whether you follow the Vedas or ancient Celtic stuff, Druids, they use the drums. That's phenomenal. I never knew that. I'm really interested if you've got any research or something I can read about that. Phenomenal. Informative as always. Thanks a lot to you back there, Hare Krishna. And thank you very much, Steve. I'm a big fan of the Zapper. Yeah, nice one, Jill. Yeah, the Zapper is really effective. I didn't spend much time on the Zapper, but the Zappers are really effective. And they're really good for, it's another thing we can take with us if we're out and about in a lot of Wi-Fi radiation. And that's another thing that can help to protect ourselves, our own bodies, and our own aura, if you like, when we're in those areas. Danielle wants to borrow the book, of course. Drop me a PM, please, just in case I forget, in Facebook or on WhatsApp, and I'll send you a copy, the spare copy of the book, no worries at all. And thanks, Steve. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Steve. Thanks, Steve. Look forward to the next webinar. Awesome. Thanks, Omar. What do you think? Tesla plates, Farah, good question. I don't know much about them, I have to say. I can't go into it because I don't know enough about them. I know there's some Tesla technology where you can use to protect the home as well, which again...
This is what the plate looks like.
Oh, let me just put you on screen. Yeah.
I was recommended by a healer friend who's into all sorts and everything.
Yeah.
And so I've actually started using the Tesla.
Oops.
So it disappeared. Okay. I just wondered what people thought, really, had they had experience, because I actually enjoy having the Tesla. When I got it, I immediately felt different. I sleep with it and pillow. I don't have Wi-Fi in my house. I use the phone. I think at 19, 20, when I went into halls of residence, we had the electric lights overhead. I got really blissed out. I couldn't cope with it, and I thought I was weird. And that's like way back. So I think a lot of my stuff has got to do with this.
Right.
So I'm,
You mean the strip lighting, is it?
Yeah. The strip lights. As soon as I went through it just really affected me. And obviously people just think, like you say, Steve, you've got 2 heads, or possibly 3.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just wondered if people were using Tesla.
Yeah. Sorry, I can't really comment because I haven't got one. But although Keely said she's used Tesla programmed jewelry, and somebody else asked me recently. Actually, they had I think it's called a Blue Shield box, again, it's supposed to protect from EMS, but I don't know. There's so many things out there. I only recommend generally the ones that I've tried. So, but yeah, thanks for the input. I'll take a look at them for sure. Do you find it's good for you?
I think so. But we're surrounded by so much, and I've got so many other things going on, like the CFS and all of that stuff. And I've got a thyroid issue, and there's a whole list of stuff. So I don't actually know.
Yeah.
I can't say, oh yeah, this is amazing, because I'm not at that place of cleanness to really get it. But I feel comfortable with it more than anything.
Awesome. Yeah, it can be like that, can it? And it can be a bit overwhelming, so many different things. Like, having tried loads of them myself as well, sometimes you don't know what's doing good, what's doing bad, and it can be a bit of a minefield, really. That's part of the reason why I wanted to do it. And one of the things I recommend in relation to that is try, like what you're doing, just trying them and seeing how you feel with them. And if you feel good with them, great. But if you don't, then obviously then sell it on or don't use it, because we're all different, and we're all going to resonate as well with different forms of these, because they work in different ways. So generally trying to help people to tune in to their intuition, really, or better still, using muscle testing to see if it's working positively for the body, really. Yeah, so that's something you could do if you wanted to test the efficacy of it, is see a kinesiologist or someone to muscle test you with it. And then what they'll do is put it next to your face and then ask different series of questions and see how strong your muscles are when they're pushing your arm down. So then that can tell them how effective it's going to be for your personal body. That's why I recommend that, because that's it's tangible. It's a tangible thing they can feel and you can feel, that is, if it's giving your body strength or not.
Can you recommend a kinesiologist? Because the one I used to go to see, left Cardiff ages ago, she was amazing.
Yeah, there's one on our first year, actually, a student of ours. She's her name's Becky. Who knows her surname? She's got Becky Williams. I think it's Williams from Porthcawl. If anybody knows.
Right. Okay.
Rebecca for kinesiology. Yes, Sage Williams. Yeah, so Rebecca Sage Williams. Her father's a healer as well. And Sally just said she's fab. So she's well into all of this stuff we're talking about as well. And she's a naturopathic nutritionist. Well, she's training to be a naturopath as well. So yeah, I'd highly recommend her. There's another Rebecca, funny enough, as well, which we can guide you to if you send us a personal message.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Rebecca, forgotten the surname off the top of my head. She's also done naturopathy, very into raw food and stuff. So it's important, isn't it? Because you can get even kinesiologists which aren't into the whole thing, you know what I mean? So we tend to like recommending therapists which are into like the holistic approach, not just the thing that they're practicing. Some people specialize obviously in one thing, but yeah, it's important to have the full array, I think. Energy dots, clearly recommended. Orgonite and crystals. Yeah, orgonite I found has been very beneficial myself. Emma really likes orgonite and the pendants that we provide as well. Energy dots I haven't tried, but they're on Canella's website apparently. Never tried them, so I can't recommend them. It's great to hear that you said they're good, Keely, but I never actually got them myself. So
can I ask a question?
Go for it. Who's there?
Lulu.
Who's this, sorry?
Lulu,
how are you doing? Yeah.
I wanted to ask, firstly I want to thank you for your time, because this has been very informative. I think since I turned 40 last October, my wanted to sort of educate myself a bit better about what I'm putting in my body or in my household. So I started to drink cleaner. I was more aware of the water. But I noticed you said something about the house filters, because I was buying in spring water by the packs, but I was getting so uncomfortable with the amount of plastic that I was using.
Yeah.
So I've got the sort of the jugs of house filter, and I put the tap water through that. But did you say that they're...
Yeah, there was somebody, again, I am researching myself, but somebody that's really into water. He's done a lot of water research. He was in one of my talks, actually, and I said about Brita filters, and he challenged me on it in the talk, because we used to recommend them. We used to say, like, that was one of the lower end ones you could use. But in the talk, he challenged me on it, and he said that, I can't remember the exact toxin, but he said that through the process, it can introduce another toxin. I can't remember what that was. So I took it on face value because he's done a lot of research. I know he's done a lot of research. I didn't bother researching more into it. I know they're quite simple.
The insole.
Yeah, were you there?
I think I walked in at that exact moment, and I was disappointed that I had missed what he said, and that was near enough the end of your talk, and I thought, oh, I've missed it.
How bizarre. How bizarre. Isn't it amazing how things work? Wow. So you're getting it now anyway. You meant to hear it at some point, but yeah, that's fantastic. I remember your face now, actually, now you mention it. And so that's what he said. I take it at face value, like, because I spoke to him afterwards, and he's done a lot of research. He's even got one of the microscopes which can see the particles of water at a microscopic level. So he knows his stuff on water, and he said that about the Brita filters. And so we found the same thing. Sometimes before we had our filter, we were using a lot of plastic, and it was just, it was disheartening putting so much plastic to the recycling, every week. So but it was the best source we could find at that time, and for some people that will still be the best source. So it's unfortunate, the environmental impact, of course. But then, so are you asking what would be the best for you now, do you mean?
Yeah, so I'm assuming that would be the best solution before you have the filter system through the house.
Oh, the house system, yeah, of course, yeah. So, the whole house system. So whatever's coming into the house, if you're in rented accommodation, sometimes it's not worth you doing it. Maybe it's better off just getting like a sink filter, for example, which just purifies your drinking water, So, and then speaking to Nigel, because then he may ask you some questions about where you live and the quality of your water, because then he'll give you the different, because you can get different cartridges which one softens the water, for example, but if you've already got soft water, you won't need that one, you know what I mean? And then you can mix and match then for your under sink filter for your drinking water.
I'll certainly contact him. I was also surprised. I think I used to go through your list of symptoms. I can relate to a lot of them, and I was suffering with a lot of them last year. And I was due to have an operation on my sinuses, in fact, and I was quite apprehensive. But I started again from that day of talks. I think Holly put me on the road of
awesome
essential oils. And since I've started using them, it's helped dramatically.
Fantastic.
I'm surprised that you haven't mentioned them in this talk, so I wondered what
because it's not my speciality, really. I do, like, I've got one we had from Egypt recently. It's just beautiful. It's papyrus. It is from the grass. It's lush. I use them, but I don't. I haven't done much research in relation to EMF. So I know Sally's on the call, and she works with doTERRA oils. And if you've got any recommendations, Sally, please pop it in the chat for essential oils for electromagnetic frequencies and protections. I use a load of them. I got them by my computer because I use a lot of them. But Star Child's a lovely company from Glastonbury. That's a nice Leo essence for my my star sign. So I use a lot of them, but I don't know which ones or how to use them specifically for EMF stuff. Which ones have worked for you? Which one?
Well, I was I've got a variety of them now. Of late, I've been using a lot of the On Guard. Again, with doTERRA, I've actually signed up with them. Oh my goodness, she's got a whole list of them. So, On Guard,
she'd be a good person to connect with, actually, if you're not connected with Sally, because she's been with them for a long time. So I think, well, a while anyway. So maybe you can bounce ideas off each other. But
I'm sure I've got 101 questions, but I'll leave you there.
No, that's cool. Thanks for asking, Lulu, because it really helps. I'm sure there's other people that wanted to ask some of the questions that you've asked, and then it'd be really helpful. So thank you. So Sally said,
I wanted to ask, the other week you did another webinar. I can't remember what the name of it was, which I was due to come on, but I literally, as it was starting, I found out that a friend of mine had just passed away from this bloody virus.
Oh, bless you, yeah.
Is it possible to get that recording, or will you be doing another one?
Yeah, of course, just drop me a message, and if you can remember what date it was, and I can send the name of it. Drop me a personal message either on Facebook or I think the email address is on. Are you on my Facebook? Yeah, cool. Drop me a PM, and I'll send it across. Just send you the link. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, pleasure. Thanks for coming, and thanks for the questions as well, because it'll help everyone else too. So Sally said for the oils, thanks a lot, Sally. She's our go-to expert with the oils. Oils protect our energetic auras are lemongrass, how do you pronounce that? Melaleuca, clary sage, on guard, and she's Nature's Divine Oils on Facebook. What's tea tree? Sorry, was there a spelling mistake there or a typo, was it? So sorry, take Melaleuca off, it's tea tree. Oh, okay, that is actually tea tree oil. Awesome, thanks, I'm glad we got there in the end. So tea tree is really good for a lot of different things, isn't it? Nice one, Sarah. Brilliant. So there's some really good tips there in relation to oils. Like I say, I haven't covered it because it's not my area. I use them, but I didn't know specific ones. So just a quick one again. So tea tree oil, clary sage, on guard. Yeah, those are and lemongrass. And you can use diffusers and different things in order to get them into your environment. And they're really good for just purifying the energy as well, not just for electromagnetic frequencies, but they're really nice to burn in the environment or to use one of the diffusers as well. So thanks a lot, Sal. Happy days. Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone. And thanks for tuning in during this time. Holly, you got anything to say? I know you got a lot of things to share. And just before I suppose people are probably maybe burnt out by now, but we've gone over 2 hours, so more than welcome if you've got anything to share, Holly.
Just one little thing to add. I mean, you know, I could go on forever about all kinds of things like this, but just to say that with our water, what we use is a distiller, because what that does is it boils it and then condenses it and collects it in a jug. So you're erasing all the programming, you're literally getting rid of all of the additional minerals and hormones and everything that's in there. The crud that's left in the bottom of the distiller is kind of horrifying, actually. But what I do then is I charge it. You know, you mentioned Dr. Emoto and his work and his research, which is what they said in the documentary that I mentioned, was that love and gratitude are the most powerful words to charge water. So I've got love and gratitude like sellotaped all over all my glass bottles and my jugs and everything like that. But it makes a big difference. Like, it feels different in your body when you're hydrating with that water. So yeah, definitely everyone just do what you can to improve the water that you're drinking.
On that, do you remineralize it with anything as well? Because, go on, do you remineralize?
Well, I've done a bit of research into it, and when I started to research distilling the water, the guy that was promoting that didn't say that you needed to, because actually it actually starts to leach out the unhelpful deposits that have started in your body. So I remineralize, obviously, with my food, using Himalayan salt and things like that in my food, but I don't remineralize the water itself in the jugs and what have you. I'll find the links to his research.
Yeah,
send it to you.
That's really interesting, because I hadn't heard that before, that it only takes out the negative minerals, because one of the things in that argument is that, and one of the reasons why we don't recommend long-term distilling is because under some research it says that it can leach the good somebody in the background. It can leach the good minerals as well as the bad minerals. So, because of what I was saying earlier, we need things like magnesium, calcium, and stuff. And naturally, from springs and stuff, we would have those. But I see what you're saying. I understand what you're saying. I haven't done the research on that. So, just from our perspective, we just say to do research around that long-term distilling. Emma's done a lot of distilling with water. With distillers, and after a while she went back to she had really good results whilst detoxing and stuff, but then after, I think it was something like a year or 2 years, she went back then because she found that she was getting depleted in minerals. So like I say, I haven't done extensive research on that, so but thank you so much for saying that. It would be very interesting to find out that, especially in relation to taking negative stuff out.
Yeah, and I think as well, and I think, what you said is so true. Just testing your body, everyone's different, using muscle testing, energy testing. Actually, when you're talking about mentioning the kinesiologist earlier, Bill Sage in Porthcawl actually turned my health story around when I was like 15, 16 and set me off on this natural healing route. So I love that his name was mentioned. No coincidences, right? It's all synchronicity. But muscle test, find out for yourself what works for your body, what doesn't, and just really becoming self-aware. You know, a lot of people are, like Lulu said, she's got these symptoms but not even like acknowledged and put two and two together. So
for sure.
Just question all of it, tune into your body, listen to what your body's telling you, and do your own energy testing to find out.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks a lot for that, Holly. It's a good point, actually, because I didn't bring up distilled water. We don't usually for that purpose, but it's really interesting. I'd be really interested to find out, you know, if you've got any.
Can I ask as well, that documentary, The Secret of Water, where do we find that? Is that on
It is on Gaia. It is on Gaia. What I'll do, because I'm a member and I get you know, unlimited sends for anyone who wants to listen. So what I'll do, I'll send the interview about the drumming and the music and how that affects the body, and I'll send the one about water as well. I'll share it in your group on Facebook, etc. So everyone can watch those.
Oh yeah, if you send it to me as a PM as well, or even on that group, that'd be fine, because then and I maybe can send it out to everybody on the webinar, because I was fascinated about that drumming and heavy metals, which I hadn't heard before. And
I'm a member of that now, Holly, since I last spoke to you. Highly recommend it for everyone. I think it's like 99 cents, isn't it, for the first month? And
something like that.
Yeah, there's like so much information on it. So it's been a godsend since I started.
Yeah, I think that one's on YouTube as well, to be honest with you, because I've seen that one, but not through Gaia. So it may even be on YouTube as well. But The Secrets of Water, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. The Secret of Water.
Yeah, so, and it's not just Dr. Emoto now. There's many other eminent scientists which are coming forward, and they're putting their livelihoods on the line, actually, when they're talking about water memory, because they're looked at as being really out there and woo, because it's not part of the norm. And they're putting themselves, their heads above the line to be fired at, really. So it's really interesting now that there's a lot of, I believe one of them is, he's an award-winning scientist. I can't remember the accolades they get now. He's had one of the like world-renowned accolades, and he's talking about this stuff, and his colleagues are saying like, whoa, you know, you're going too far out of the norm now. And but the more I've researched about water, it's taking excuse the pun, taking a deep dive into it, but literally it's phenomenal. And yes, it's a liquid crystal, it's a liquid computer basically, so we can really program, just like Holly was saying, we can really program our water to help us in different ways. So if we're struggling with different things, literally speak to our water and speaking to it and telling it what we want from it, or put in words of what we want from it. That's how I came up with this bottle, actually, was because I was going into business meetings and stuff with you know, the fruit bottles you can get that have got like a bit in the middle where you can put bits of lemon and stuff in them. So I had one of those, and it was covered with loads of sticky posted, like sandwich box sticky post-its all around it, love and all these different things. And I'm going to all like business meetings and stuff, and it was getting a bit embarrassing. So as I was thinking, I wanted to make something which did all that, but which was like more aesthetically pleasing. And now instead they look at me, oh, that's pretty, even if they're not into this, like, you know what I mean? So there's so that's initially why I came up with it. But yeah, you can do it the old school way, and in some ways it's better like that, because it's your own writing anyway, and it's your own energy which is going into that writing and going into the water, and you can be more specific on what you want as well. So
where can we find all your products that you have available, and prices and etc.?
Yeah, good question. It's not currently, I've got an eBay site, but it's not currently on our site. We're updating our site to include all of these, because it's more recent, it's more in the last year this has come up. So I haven't got them all in one place. So what I'll do is I'll send my eBay account to you after this, so you can have access to some of the stuff. Other than that, it's literally like people that are in our network and stuff that drop us messages, and then I'll send them. So it's a little bit old school at the minute until we get it updated on our website, unfortunately. But we do need to get that done. We've already got a website done, but for different many reasons I won't go into now. It's not currently up yet, unfortunately. So I'll send out as much as I can after this, but thanks for that heads up though, Lulu. So I'll send that out after this as well, with the recording, if you wanted to re-listen to this as well. And yeah, so thank you so much everyone for tuning in. It's been amazing to connect with you, and sorry for going over, but I think it's a really important subject. I feel really enthused, and thank you for bringing all your energies into it collectively. This has helped the webinar as well, and I hope everything's going as well as it can for you, your loved ones. Lots of love to you at this time, and yeah, share all this info far and wide, and we can be the shining lights to people that aren't aware of this stuff. And it could be some simple stuff which can make a massive difference to some people which are living conventional, like Western lifestyles. It can really make a difference to their energy levels and their health. So I think that's it, unless anyone's got anything else. Happy days. So Hare Krishna, Namaste. Thank you so much everyone. Lots of love to you.
Thank you, Steve. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Lots of love, guys.
Bye.
Remember, you try to put someone else.